Oh, good. Okay.
So, hi all. Welcome to today's program. And as you come in, just think of the difficulties and the problems that are posed by nuclear weapons in this period of time. And this today is something that you can do about it. You can take action. We can take action together, and we can help support in the state legislature S155 and H3688. So this is our moment. This is a program of Nuclearband.us and Mass Peace Action and 23 other organizations around Massachusetts. So welcome all. And we have lots of people to talk about various aspects of this state bill. We have time until May 4th, I believe, to work to get to all of our friends, our neighbors, getting them to write and urge our state legislators to work for this important bill. We can take part, we can affect change. So I welcome and start out with Timon Wallace, who is the executive director of Nuclearband.us.
Thanks,
Timon.
Susan. Thanks, Susan, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I know this is not everybody's top priority, and it's certainly not the top priority for all of our colleagues in the Massachusetts State House, but we're very grateful for you all to join us, and we've got a great lineup of speakers to talk about why we want to pass this bill and why it's so important. And we're going to hope that we don't lose anybody on this call until you've had a chance to actually do something about it, either writing to your state legislatures or to friends and colleagues and family that you might have in other parts of the state. So I'm going to pass it first to our state representative from Northampton area, Lindsay Sabadosa, who has been spearheading these bills in the State House. I just want to say quickly that some of us have been working for the last 4 years on these bills, and others for many years longer than that. And they tend to get thrown out at an early stage in committee, and they're what's called sent to study, which is the euphemism for being thrown out. And so the only bill that we now have left in the State House is this one bill which actually calls for a study. So we're trying to say, rather than send it to study like all the others, why don't we have a study and actually do some homework and come back to the State House with some concrete recommendations that they can implement. And we're going to hear what some of the things are that people have tried to put forward so far. And Jonathan, we're going to you're muted.
Very quickly, I just heard from Representative Carol Doherty that our taxpayers' right to know bill, which says the state will tell people where their taxes are going, including the federal taxes, that looks like that will be reported at a committee. So it looks like we may have two bills.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
Thanks.
So our first speaker is Representative Lindsay Sabadosa, and so I'd like to pass it over to you to tell us a bit about the bill and why we need to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today and for spending your Saturday afternoon engaging around this very important issue. I'm really pleased to have filed H3688, and I have to use my notes to remember the bill's title because it is extremely long. So it's a resolve providing for an investigation and study by a special commission relative to the existential threat posed by nuclear weapons to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So quite a mouthful. We often just refer to it as the resolve in the office to keep that shorter. I'll leave leave it up to you as you're lobbying your elected officials about what sort of abbreviated name you might like to use. But I think H3688 is a good jargon. So the legislation is very simple, really, and I think Timon did sort of hit the nail on the head when he said the bill is really just creating a citizens commission, and the citizens commission will look to create recommendations and measures around divestment, disqualification of bidders, and other financial and legal implications for companies that produce, manufacture, maintain nuclear weapons, and try to understand how Massachusetts can remove itself from the equation of nuclear weapons in the world. The commission is made up of 11 members. I think it's important for you to know that, because when you are advocating with legislators, you're going to need to know what the bill does and how it does it. So the bill sets up a special citizens commission. It has 11 members that are appointed by the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, the Governor, the Secretary of State, and the Attorney General. There is an application process so that members of this commission will be people who are truly interested in the subject, not just people who, perhaps are appointed by the governor, but maybe don't have that level of expertise. And then there are very clear reporting deadlines for the commission. The commission must meet within a certain number of days, and it must issue a report by 2024. Of course, that will be dependent on when the bill is passed, so know that those deadlines can be moved. But I say those things because when you're sitting down with legislators, many of them are never going to have read this bill, even if they're on the committee. They may remember the hearing, but they may not remember all the particulars. So this is really your opportunity to explain to them what the bill does. They're going to say things to you like, well, this is really a federal issue. Massachusetts can't do its part. And I think the response to that is this commission is intended to see how Massachusetts can, in fact, do its part. We can't answer that question without setting up the commission and doing the study. So a lot of the questions that are going to be posed to you will, in fact, be resolved through the creation of the commission. And for legislators, this idea of a commission it's often the lowest hanging fruit, right? We're not passing something into law. We're not saying we must divest. We're not saying we must disqualify bidders. We're trying to figure out, can we do it? How can we do it? Let's create the path forward to doing that. So really the argument is whether they support the idea of having nuclear weapons or not. If they think that nuclear weapons are great things and we should be investing in them, then they're not going to support this. But if they think that there's a path forward, then this is the bill that figures that out for us. The bill, I think, as many of you know, because I see faces that testified or wrote letters of support to the committee, has already had its hearing, and we have been extended. That's a very good sign, because what we're hearing on the House side is, well, all you're asking for is a conversation. And a conversation is something we should always have, right? So that's good. We're hearing positive feedback from the House. But because we are, as we know, in a moment of intense geopolitical turmoil, I think there are some hesitations about, is this the right time for us to pass this legislation? When you're talking with legislators, I would point out that just last session, we had a victory by passing a home rule petition for Northampton, where we allowed the city to disqualify bidders who were involved in the maintenance, manufacture, production of nuclear weapons. It was a small step, but it's something that we can show as possible within the Commonwealth. So if we are able to do that on a municipal level, we can certainly do it on a statewide level, and this bill will tell us how. So I'm always here and happy to answer questions as you decide how you're best going to approach your own legislators. We don't have a tremendous number of co-sponsors on the bill, and because the bill has been extended, we can always get those co-sponsors. But the key at the moment is really talking to the chairs of the committee and members of the committee to elevate the bill as one of the priorities that they should be working on towards that May deadline. So thank you very much for having me here today. And again, always available for questions. If anyone has them, feel free to reach out either in the chat or to me personally if you'd prefer. Thank you again.
Hi, is Jamie Eldridge here? Okay, well, then
Be here yet.
Okay, well then we'll go on with our next speaker, Joseph Gerson. Joseph Gerson is the president of CPDCS, which is the Campaign for Peace, Disarmament, and Common Security. And before you, Joseph will talk about why this matters in light of Ukraine. But before you speak, Joseph, just want to thank Representative Sabadosa for all of your help and your remarks. Thank you. Joseph.
Okay, so I'll jump in and just to appreciate Representative Sabadosa, kind of launching this initiative. That's really encouraging, and also to note as we think about the TPNW, to think of it in terms of being a counterforce to the nuclear nine. And in fact, in a most recent issue of Foreign Affairs, Rose Gottemoeller, the former arms control negotiator, raised concerns that when the first meeting of the parties to the treaty takes place this spring, there is the danger that they might move toward sanctions against the nuclear powers. So it's having an interesting impact. So my responsibility here, I'm afraid, is to be a bit of a specter of doom, talking about the nuclear consequences of the Ukraine war. First, to say that both Sam Nunn, the senator, former senator, and people I've been engaged with in Track 2 conversations are all making comparisons at the moment to the Cuban Missile Crisis, and afraid that a miscalculation could lead to the unthinkable. I was, about 20 minutes ago, more hopeful that negotiations would proceed toward an end to the war in the relatively near future. But I've just read that President Biden has said that Putin cannot remain in power, and that is pouring oil on the fire. And in the context of Russian military doctrine, they could conceivably interpret that as a threat to the continuation of the Russian state, which is one of their criteria for the use of nuclear weapons. We also have the unfortunate news today from Senator Markey that President Biden has used the Ukraine crisis as the excuse not to include sole use doctrine in the U.S. nuclear posture review. I want maybe to focus on a number of the dangers here. At the center of them has been the threats, ideas of implementing a no-fly zone. A lot of people think this would be very helpful. It would help to protect civilians on the ground, maybe keep the planes from Russian planes from destroying Ukrainian buildings and infrastructure. But having a no-fly zone means that countries imposing it have to first shoot down the anti-aircraft weapons of the opposing state, and then to shoot down the planes of the opposing state. And this means moving to a U.S.-NATO Russian war, and its escalation likely then to nuclear war. Fortunately, the Biden administration has refused to go there, but the longer the war goes on, the greater the temptations will be to move in this direction. Simply to say the polls have been pressing in this direction, but didn't get what they wanted out of the NATO summit. Another danger here is that as the Russian forces find themselves increasingly on the defensive, and not only the forces, but maybe Putin as well, there's the danger that they might resort to the use of chemical weapons or even tactical nuclear weapons. Winds exist. Chernobyl, poisoned much of Europe. The fear here, and was talked about yesterday, the fear is that if there's fallout, either from tactical nuclear weapons or chemical weapons, that drifts into NATO states, that could be interpreted as an attack on a NATO state, and thus move NATO into war against Russia. saying a little bit here about Putin's nuclear alert. Its specifics are not at all clear. It simply says that Russia's deterrent forces moved to a special regime of combat duty. The Russians I've been speaking with say that this is not a big deal. What it means is it gives more officials in Russia access to the command and control system. But we really can't know if that's the case. Also, just to say that on March 3 General Assembly resolution condemned the decision of the Russian Federation to increase readiness of its nuclear forces. I think one thing that hasn't happened here has been to use this war and crisis as a mirror. So what Putin has done with his nuclear threats mirrors what the United States has done. Admiral Charles Richard, who was the head of Strategic Command just a year ago, said that U.S. threats to initiate nuclear war during crises in wars, and I quote, creates maneuver space for us to project conventional military power strategically. Or as Noam Chomsky said some years ago, it ensures that other nations will not come to defend those that we're determined to attack. And so with this threat, Putin has been successful in preventing the imposition of a no-fly zone. We also need to recognize and appreciate that beginning actually with the Iran crisis in 1946, running through all kinds of threats to Korea, China, run-ups to the Iraq War, and Trump's fire and fury, the United States has prepared and threatened to initiate nuclear war at least 30 times. And when you have these mobilizations, when you have these alerts, it increases the possibility of nuclear weapons accidents, of orders being sent in the wrong direction. For example, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a nuclear installation, U.S. nuclear installation in Okinawa, was sent the order to launch its missiles. Fortunately, the commanding officer refused to follow those orders. But we need to appreciate the dangers in such a time of mobilization. Finally, to say that in the midst of this war, you can read in Foreign Affairs and other places that those who influence policy, we'll put it that way, a number of them who influence policy are concerned with having to, from their perspective, put more military force and priority to Russia and containing Russia, while also having the national priority being containing China. That the U.S. has to increasingly prepare to fight on two fronts. And given the limitations of U.S. military power, they're saying we need to increase our reliance on nuclear weapons, including tactical nuclear weapons. So we're going to see more of that, as well as far more military spending in the wake of the Russian invasion. What else to say here? Yeah, and then I guess maybe to wrap up with 2 points here. In the discussions I've been involved in, I'm hearing that not only are we entering into a new Cold War, but actually a new ice age. With the exception of the New START treaty, all the previous arms control agreements have been abandoned, and New START expires in 4 years, which means limited time to negotiate a follow-on treaty. But in discussions both before and following the invasion, with senior figures from Russia, Europe, right? Somebody could be silenced there. With senior figures across Europe, Russia, and the United States, they're saying that even if we're in a situation of continuing confrontation, we need to be moving to negotiate the follow-on treaty to start. We need to update and re-implement the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Agreement, so you have no missile deployments essentially from the Atlantic to the Urals. We need to return to the Open Skies Treaty, and we need to begin negotiations to prevent cyber penetration of other nations' command and control systems. Last thing to say is that the former mayor of Hiroshima, Tadakiba, and others, including Nobel laureates, have called for declarations on both the NATO and Russia sides that nuclear weapons will not be used in this war. And I think we need to do everything we can to reinforce that call. So I will shut up at this point. I hope that was helpful. And look forward to hearing the other speeches and seeing how this campaign moves forward.
Thank you so much, Joe, for that reality of what is going on, for helping us understand a greater world perspective and also the threat of nuclear war. All the more reason for us to thank Representative Sabadosa for sponsoring this bill on Nuclear Weapons Commission and for us to work on it. And so our next speaker is Emma Pike, and Emma Pike is the Nuclearband.us Massachusetts Advocacy Coordinator. She's going to give us a sneak preview of the Massachusetts Nuclear Weapons Dossier. Emma.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. I'm going to share my screen so everybody can see exactly what Susan just mentioned. Here we go, and maybe we can put it in full screen. There we go. Yes, and actually I will put everyone. There we go. Yes, so thank you so much for that introduction, Susan, and also thank you to everyone, for taking your time to be here this afternoon, and for also giving me this opportunity to share a preview of this dossier that I've been working on towards the effort to get this bill passed. So what I'll show you now is not the dossier in its final form. That will be printed and published online in the next couple of weeks. But what I do want to show is some of the most important, relevant contextual information for what we do know about the impact of nuclear weapons in the state of Massachusetts today, both the potential, which we've heard a bit about already, but also the real impact that, is actually occurring at this very moment, as well as what it is that we as the public don't know that we deserve to know, and also what are some actions that we as individuals and as our state can take in light of this reality. So it will eventually be distributed among members of the State House, and we hope that it will provide them with the information that they need to be able to make an informed and wise decision on the bill that prioritizes the constituents, or in other words, the people of Massachusetts. So, as you can see from this table of contents here, the main areas of focus, I'm not going to talk in depth about anything really, because you will hear from people much more qualified than I am about those things, but the main areas of focus are firstly the threat of nuclear weapons to Massachusetts. So what is it that makes Massachusetts a potential target? What might happen in the event of nuclear conflict, either here in Massachusetts or even elsewhere? And also the effects of the enormous amounts of money that go toward nuclear weapons and what that means for the people of Massachusetts. Secondly is Massachusetts' direct involvement in the nuclear business. So companies here in our state that are involved, even university research, largely government funded, and also military bases. And finally, what we can do about it. I really appreciated, Susan, that you started our event today with this call to action that we really, there is plenty that we can do, which is why we're all gathered here today. And I'll just show it also here. We've included a testimony from Congressman Jim McGovern in support of the bill, and we hope to also include letters from other members of the State House in support of the bill. So before I talk about some of these threats, I actually want to invite everyone to consider the question, what do you personally believe that a country, or in this case, a state's duty is to its citizens? And I would include inhabitants as well. In other words, what's the very least that you think a country or a state should do for its people? And my personal answer is first and foremost to keep them safe and to never infringe upon their right to life, which is the most basic of human rights. And this, of course, is a prerequisite for ensuring that every person in our state is able to live a life of basic dignity and respect, which every person deserves. So nuclear weapons in this context present a colossal infringement on the right of the people of Massachusetts in these three major ways. So firstly, as a potential target, right? And this, I think, is, most of us here are aware that even if a single nuclear detonation were to occur, the consequences would just be catastrophic, right? So this is the most direct threat of being an actual target of nuclear conflict. But secondly, we are also threatened by the effects of nuclear conflict anywhere. And you'll hear more about this later tonight. But one of the defining characteristics, right, of nuclear weapons is that their destructive effects cannot be contained to any given geographic area. So a nuclear conflict anywhere in the world will actually affect all of us, causing irreversible damage to our natural environment, which in turn causes irreversible damage to our human systems, our ability even to grow food, our economic and social systems will collapse, our livable infrastructure, the list just goes on. And so while these are sort of potential threats, these weapons also detract from our lives every day by diverting enormous amounts of public funds, right? Our own tax money to nuclear weapons, which you'll also hear more about later today. So I'm going to take you through some of what the report looks like. This goes over some information about potential targets in Massachusetts. So this map here, every dot on this map represents a company that is involved in the research of, development of, or manufacturing for parts for nuclear weapons. And I want to draw your attention to here. This is just a list of, not all, but some of the major military installations in Massachusetts. And those of you who are maybe near or in Bedford or Lincoln, Concord, Lexington, you might be familiar with the Hanscom Air Force Base, which, among other things, is home to the Nuclear Command, Control, and Communications Integration Directorate, a long name. And it coordinates work that's happening to develop the system that would be used to coordinate US nuclear forces in the event of a nuclear war. So that's one example of direct involvement right in our backyards that we know of. But we also don't know what we don't know, right? Which is part of why this commission would be so crucial. And it also goes to show a few examples of simulations of nuclear detonations. And so this one is targeted at Draper Labs, or officially Charles Stark Draper Laboratory, which is in Cambridge. And this is a key institution really for US nuclear forces because it develops and builds guidance systems for, among other things, Trident submarine launched nuclear missiles. And this is just some of what it might look like if there was one, here you can see that the simulation is just a 100 kiloton nuclear weapon, which, to be honest, is on the conservative side of what's possible. And these are some of the effects that would come of that, and some estimated fatalities as well. Here again is Hanscom Base, which I just referenced, and also an example for the city of Boston, which would, of course, right, be at least on a list of targets, we believe. It's very likely. And so you can look at these more in depth in your own time when the report is officially published. And also, I'm so sorry if anyone can hear my computer fan. Sounds like it's about to, launch into space. So I hope you can't hear it. It's very loud for me. But anyway, this again is something you'll hear more about later, but the effects of nuclear spending and thinking about all of the things that that are underfunded in Massachusetts, or that we could use that funding for to better our lives. you can see here this terrifying statistic that the US, according to the Department of Defense, the US plans to spend over $114,000 just on nuclear weapons alone per minute over the next 10 years. And so whatever it is that you care about, whoever you are, I think one of these things, you know, is you can think of definitely better ways for this money to be spent. And it also goes through highlighting a few of these really key institutions that we know of in the state that are involved in nuclear weapons. But then finally, you know, I think it's so important that we remember that there is so much that we can do. So one example of what we can do is to pass a resolution, right? Which this page shows an example of a resolution to prohibit nuclear weapons that actually did not pass. But it can be a model for future resolutions. In addition to, another thing that the state can do is divest from nuclear weapons, right? This is also an example of a bill that did not pass. But yes, I'll continue because I think I'm running out of time. But this is also just to visually see what so many other states around the country are doing. Every box represents a state, and all of the towns and counties in the state that have already passed similar resolutions prohibiting, in support of prohibiting nuclear weapons. And this is also, here's a list so far of all the towns right in our state that have done this, right? So it's not a revolutionary idea per se. This is really something that we see has so much support with the people. And finally, right, what we can do is this bill that is still, you know, up for a vote, and we can pass this bill to establish a special commission. And I really, you know, I want to end just by saying that I really believe that it's the duty of elected officials to strive to make choices that put the lives and the well-being of their constituents above all else. And I really believe that they see that as their duty as well, at least for the most part, I hope. And so, you know, the hope is that this dossier will help to illuminate some of the reasons why we need this commission, to, you know, find answers to the questions that we have that we don't know yet, and to identify our blind spots so that elected officials can be better equipped to take actions that truly do put the people of Massachusetts forward. And I'll end by just showing you some pictures of your fellow Massachusetts people in various places around the state who have been out there campaigning and showing their support. So I'll stop my screen share, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share.
Emma, thank you so much. You have given such wonderful information for us all to share. Thank you. It's really important, so that now we are all ready to take action, and later on soon in this program, we'll have the opportunity to take action. Thanks so much, Emma, for all of us. And now let's go on to Ira Helfand. Ira is the co-chair of the Nuclear Weapons Abolition Committee of PSR, Physicians for Social Responsibility. And he's going to talk about the impact of a nuclear war on Massachusetts. Ira.
Thanks, Susan. And I want to thank also Emma for preparing what looks like it's going to be an absolutely superb resource that we are all going to be able to use for our work here in Massachusetts, both on behalf of the Commission and on behalf of the Back from the Brink bill that you mentioned did not get reported out of committee, but which we certainly will be reintroducing, which has been approved by all the various cities and towns that she showed on the map and in the report. And also want to thank Representative Sabadosa and also Senator Joe Comerford, also from Northampton, for their incredible leadership on a range of these pieces of legislation to try to deal with the nuclear problem. This is obviously, as Joseph pointed out, a particularly important moment to be addressing the nuclear question. We are probably as close as we have ever been to nuclear war. The crisis has not by any means passed. the danger is probably going to grow significantly in coming days and weeks unless there is a breakthrough in the negotiations. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot that we can do at the moment to affect this immediate situation. There are a few things. Reference was made to a statement signed by, at this point, 16 Nobel laureates calling for both Russia and NATO to state publicly and unequivocally that they will not use nuclear weapons in the current conflict. That statement has been taken up by the Avaz movement, and they are posting it as a petition on their global website. So far, it's attracted over 100,000 signatures, and I just posted in the chat the link if people want to go and sign that petition and share it widely. Avaz will be sending it out tomorrow morning to the 69 million people on their email list globally. It's being translated into all 17 languages that the Avaz platform uses this afternoon and will be going out tomorrow morning. But I think realistically, this is not going to have a huge impact. It mainly helps to establish what these governments should be doing. It's probably not going to affect what they actually will do. And we, frankly, at the moment, just have to hope that we have a lot of good luck in coming weeks and dodge this nuclear bullet, which is sort of ricocheting around the world. But if we are lucky enough to survive this moment, we have to make absolutely sure that we are never in this kind of situation ever again. And we need to seize this as a very teachable moment to educate people about the nuclear danger so that we can build the movement needed to get rid of these weapons, so the treaty and the prohibition of nuclear weapons can come into universal compliance across the globe. And this is a teachable moment. People are paying attention to the nuclear weapons question in a way they have not for decades. There's not quite the attention and focus that there ought to be, but it is much better than it has been. And it is our job to try to increase that understanding. And this commission is a way of doing that. The primary function I see of the commission, and why I'm so enthusiastic about hopefully seeing it come into creation, is that it can be an enormous vehicle for educating people about all the things that Emma talked about in the dossier, the medical consequences, the cost in terms of diverted resources. We can use this commission to do the educational work we need to do. I had an experience yesterday that was really incredible in terms of the need for this education. I was able to give the grand rounds at Cooley Dickinson Hospital here in Northampton and asked people in the audience, a lot of you look like you are much younger than me and not of an age to remember the Cold War. What is your appreciation of the nuclear danger? Usually in my lecture, and this was the case yesterday, I reference that we all have images of Hiroshima. And it's an important warning, but Hiroshima does not begin to prepare us for what's going to happen if there's a nuclear war. And then I did describe that, which I will in just a minute. And one of the people in the audience, a very smart 40-year-old doctor, said, that's exactly the point. I've always thought it would be like Hiroshima. I never understood what a nuclear war would actually be like. And then she burst into tears. And I apologized for upsetting her so much. And she said, no, this is what you have to do. We need to know this. How can we protect ourselves if we don't know what's going to happen? And I think that's a situation that we're dealing with. We need to take the medical message about what is going to happen if there's a nuclear war and spread this widely so that people understand the enormity of the danger that they're facing. Now, in the dossier, Emma showed some really wonderful illustrations of what happens if a 100-kiloton bomb goes off at each of several sites here in Massachusetts. And 100 kilotons is the size of the weapons, most of the warheads on Russian submarines. Their land-based weapons range anywhere from 400 to 800 kilotons. We don't know what the exact targeting strategy would be, but it is the assumption that a major city like Boston would be targeted with multiple warheads. The Draper Lab, Hanscom Field, several of the Raytheon production facilities, Logan Airport, the downtown, the port, all of these are probably independently targeted with weapons of up to 400 to 800 kilotons, maybe some of the more remote ones with 100 kiloton weapons. We've always used a model of a single very large 20 megaton explosion to try to help people understand what this would look like. The megatonnage is probably a little bit greater than would actually hit Boston. The destruction I'm going to describe in it is actually less because you cause more damage by having a bunch of small weapons spread out over a large area. But it's kind of hard to envision that. So this model of a single explosion, I think accurately portrays what would happen. Within a thousandth of a second, a fireball would form, reaching out for 2 miles in every direction. Within this area, 4 miles across, the heat would be as great as on the surface of the sun, and everything would be vaporized. The buildings, the people, the trees, the upper level of the earth itself would disappear. To a distance of 4 miles in every direction, the wind would exceed 600 miles per hour. Mechanical forces of that magnitude destroy anything that human beings can build. To a distance of 6 miles in every direction, the heat would be so intense that automobiles would melt. And to a distance of 16 miles in every direction, out past the 128 Beltway, everything flammable would burn. Paper, cloth, wood, gasoline, heating oil, it all ignites, and you get hundreds of thousands of fires, which over the next half hour coalesce into a firestorm, 32 miles across, 800 square miles. Within this entire area, the temperature rises to 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. All of the oxygen is consumed, and every living thing dies. In the case of Boston, we're talking about something on the order of 3 to 5 million people, depending on the time of the day and how many people have come into the area from the outer suburbs. And if this were part of a large-scale war between the United States and Russia, this level of destruction would occur in every major city in the United States, in Russia, and if NATO were involved in the conflict, most of the great cities in Canada and Europe as well. All told, perhaps 200 to 300 to 400 million people dead in an afternoon. And as Emma suggested, that's only part of the story. The economic infrastructure that all of us depend on to survive will also be destroyed. There'd be no internet, no electric grid, no food distribution system, no public health system, no banking system, no system to distribute heating oil and gasoline. All the things that we need to maintain ourselves. And in the months after this initial attack, those who survived the initial attack would also almost certainly die from starvation, from epidemic disease, from radiation poisoning, from exposure. And still, we're only talking about the direct effects in the countries that are attacked with nuclear weapons. The climate effect is the overriding effect of a nuclear war of this scale. War between the United States and Russia would put 150 million tons of soot in the upper atmosphere, drop temperatures across the planet at an average of 18 degrees Fahrenheit. In the interior regions of North America and Eurasia, the temperatures would drop 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. This is colder than the coldest moment of the last ice age. I'll finish. Thanks. And under these conditions, all food production across the planet would stop, and the vast majority of the human race would starve. Now, the vast majority of people in Massachusetts today do not understand that this is the threat they face. And it's our job to educate them about that. I've done the doom and gloom, knowing full well that others are going to talk about the solution. You can't just say what I did without explaining to people also that this is not the future that needs to be, that we can prevent this. And there are very specific things which we can and must do to do that. And that's the message of the rest of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ira, for that important information, and all the more reason why we have this chance to work on the Nuclearband Commission now for Massachusetts. Next is Elaine Scarry, a professor and author at Harvard University, and a very important voice on the issue of nuclear weapons. Elaine is going to talk about why this is an issue of democracy. Elaine.
Thank you, Susan. And I'm very grateful to all the previous speakers for the information and vision they've given us. You can already hear in what Ira has said that nuclear weapons are utterly incompatible, not just with democracy, but with all governance. How could the vision that he just described ever be seen as coexisting with anything that is governance? I'm going to try and give a description of the overall nuclear architecture, but the best summary of it is to say that it is an absolute inversion or turning on its head or turning inside out of whatever over centuries we've tried to understand by both democracy and governance. And I'll start by focusing on democracy and then go on to talk about governance. If the level of injury involves many millions of people and many millions of creatures, animals and plants, and sky and trees hurt, that means that we've all been denied the right of self-defense. That is, the denial of any kind of aspiration to a quality of survival or a quality of the right to life, as Emma was describing it. We have lost completely our capacity to defend ourselves, which is often seen as the right underlying every other right. We've also lost the capacity for mutual aid, since once we have that level of injuries, not only will the hospitals and other agencies that might have been able to help, will they be gone, but even people coming in from outside will be unable to enter, as the International Red Cross keeps telling us. One way I think that it's possible to try and get hold of this kind of anti-governance structure is to realize that of the thousands of steps that are required to put a nuclear architecture into place, 999 out of 1,000 have been completed. They are in place. They are ready to go day and night, 24/7. There's only one step left, and that's the launch. So if all that separates us from the vision we just got from Ira is one step, then how can it possible be that this existing architecture is compatible with governance? To me, one way of trying to get hold of the problem is to remember the fact that any weapon, even a simple weapon such as a knife, has two ends: the end where the injury occurs and the end where the infliction is instilled. And at both of these, we see the radical obscenity and radical dismantling of democracy. If we know that even with a tiny percentage of the overall arsenal being used, there would be many millions of people killed on the first day and what's estimated to be 1 billion in the first month, that's clearly a devastation of anything that would be considered to be governance. But it's also the case that the infliction end is equally incompatible with governance, since all that injury is going to be carried out by a single individual. That is, in the United States and in the other nuclear states, arrangements are in place for between 1 and 3 people to issue the launch order. So that instead of having what not only democracy, but government, the philosophy of government in general has long put forward, we have a kind of miniaturization at the authorization end, just as we have an obscene magnification at the injuring end. During the Trump administration, people began to be worried about this because he seemed somewhat reckless and out of control, and those worries were well-founded. But in fact, the historical record shows that even much more seemingly stable people, Eisenhower, JFK, Lyndon Johnson, Nixon, contemplated first use of nuclear weapons by a presidential launch. In the founding of our own country, someone like Madison said very clearly that a country will not always have enlightened statesmen at the helm. That's why you have to have a country of laws, not a country ruled by, as we presently have, individual men. So too, Justice Davis in the 19th century, a very famous and important justice, said no country has the right to just assume that it will always have kind and decent leaders. But not only do we have to worry about an indecent and unkind leader, even kind and decent leaders having this kind of hair trigger situation with the nuclear arsenal put us in tremendous danger of the kind of worldwide destruction that we've heard being described. The other reason why I focus on the two ends of the weapon is because we talk all the time about the injuring end, that is, we call them weapons of mass destruction, but we don't often enough see that what's almost equally horrible, that level of cruelty is actually in place to be licensed. The protocols in place license one person to do this. There is no second person. There is no break on it. It doesn't require the vice president. It doesn't require the chief joint of staff. It doesn't require someone in the Pentagon. It doesn't require anything in the submarines or the ICBMs. In fact, just the opposite. All those people are trained in many cases 24/7 to carry out the launch order, which is itself the length of a tweet. The good news is that if we were to bring democracy back and bring governance back, we have the tools at hand to dismantle the nuclear arsenal. On the one hand, we have international law, which addresses the illegality of bringing about that kind of humanitarian catastrophe. And on the other end of the weapon, we have national law, constitutional law, which says that you can't have a single person introducing war. Constitutions and social contract theory exist in order to make it very, very difficult to go to war. But we've put aside in the nuclear age all the constitutional provisions, therefore making it very easy to go to war, making sure that there's no impediments between a presidential launch, again, which is the length of half a tweet, according to Bruce Blair, who served in a missile silo, and therefore undoing the whole principle of governance. The bills that now exist in Congress to undo presidential first use are based on the constitutional requirements for a congressional declaration of war. And there are other provisions of our Constitution that, if brought to bear on this problem, would make it actually quite easy for us to dismantle the arsenal, but only easy if people of the United States would come forward and say, I stand behind the law, I put my hand to it, I put my heart to it. Other countries also have constitutional provisions that say that you can't have a single leader initiating war. For example, Article 35 in the French Constitution, Article 246 in the Indian Constitution. Russia also has constitutional provisions that say that if there's any injuring to a foreign population beyond Russia's own borders, it has to have the equivalent of the body that is parallel to our Senate.
Elaine, could you sum it up, please?
Yeah, so I guess I would just sum it up by saying that one of the founders of social contract theory, who said that the whole point of social contract, that is the whole point of constitutions, is getting us out of this miserable condition of war. He said that the worst thing that could ever happen to a population was the kind of massacre of that population. He said, if that happens, it means there wasn't a democracy, there wasn't an oligarchy, there wasn't an aristocracy, there was in fact no governance at all. And the fact that we have an arrangement in place to do exactly that should be understood as meaning that we don't have any kind of legitimate governance at all. Finally, I'll just end with one other philosopher, Aristotle, who said that a good constitution is a constitution that makes its own population desire to be good. But right now, we and our population have largely gone to sleep on this and are not aspiring to keep governance in place. But if we bring both international law and national law to bear on this, we can easily bring about the dismantling of the nuclear architecture.
Thank you so much, Elaine, and pointing out why we need to wake up and take action. Thank you. Next is Jonathan King from MIT. He's a co-chair of Mass Peace Action. Mines, not missiles, subways, not submarines. And he's going to talk about what Massachusetts could spend money on. Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Susan, and everybody on this call. Timon and Vicky for getting it going. As of today, 975,000 Americans have died from COVID-19. It hasn't been easy to understand how in one of the richest, scientifically most advanced nations, the country was totally unprepared for the coronavirus pandemic. Some of the answer lies in the fact that our Medicare, Medicaid, private health insurance, and other hospital systems are focused only on people once they're already ill, and are divorced from the effort to actually prevent disease, keep people healthy. Now, none of these health insurance programs may make any contribution to diagnosing, preventing, understanding the origins of ill health and disease, nor do they finance the development of vaccines, therapies, and new treatments. These are all in the realm of biomedical research, and this is almost totally dependent on congressional discretionary budget allocations to the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, a little bit to the Center for Disease Control. I think I'm unmuted. So these agencies distribute our tax dollars to research labs in colleges, universities, medical schools across the nation. They're primarily younger and low-paid graduate students, thousands and thousands in Massachusetts, tackle unveiling the roots of disease, all diseases, Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, coronaviruses, and other viruses. Of course, millions of Americans die each year from these diseases. And these programs are the ones that are responsible for figuring out how to prevent and treat heart disease, stroke, cancer, arthritis, et cetera. It was because of the decades of the public investment that did exist in virus structure and genetic and nucleic acid chemistry that the biotech and pharmaceutical industry was able to develop the vaccines that we now have so quickly, because we had decades of investment, even though it wasn't adequate. Now, unfortunately, as with most of the other programs providing essential human services in the Commonwealth, these civilian programs have been starved over the past decades in order to fund the bloated military budget. And the most rapidly growing sector of the defense budget are the appropriations for upgrading nuclear weapons. These are estimated to cost us $2 trillion, $2,000 billion. That's our income tax dollars over the next 25 years. How will these programs be financed? In part by limiting the expenditures on housing, on education, on transportation, and biomedical research. The recent appropriation just a month ago of almost $800 billion for defense knocked knocked out of the Congress the Build Back Better bill, which is 1/3 the amount of money, but would go way, way, way further into improving the quality of life in the United States. Now, unfortunately, very few Americans and very few Massachusetts citizens, including state legislators and senators, know that the $800 billion for the defense budget is paid for by income taxes, and that about half of the income taxes people send to the government goes to war making, new weapons. In my experience, when people know this, they're shocked. First of all, they don't believe it. When you tell them that half their income tax dollars went for weapon system of war, they don't believe it. They say, if that was true, I would know that. No, they don't know that, because no agency of the government in 100 years has ever written back to the taxpayers to tell them how their tax dollars are spent. The IRS may harangue you about getting your tax dollars in, but they don't tell you how they were spent. Now, if we had a Citizens Commission, a Nuclear Weapons Commission, one thing that would come out is, well, as Timon and Lindsay Sebdos have pointed out, how much of our tax dollars go to maintain this infrastructure. And that would be an eye-opener for many citizens. People don't realize how explicitly this was. In 2003, there was a SARS epidemic in Asia. There was the MERS Middle East epidemic from the other side of the world. And people, myself, I'm professionally a virologist, we were very aware of the dangers as was epidemiologists. And the program started to prepare for the future, and it was cut. It was cut. And in a question to Trump when he first came into office, why these popular programs were being cut, he said, well, we needed to add 15% to the defense budget, so we cut the domestic programs for 15%. That was one of the rare cases where that's, stated directly. So this, to me, the secret to getting control on nuclear weapons is for people who don't have housing, people who don't have health care, people who worry about the coronavirus, to realize that their life is being threatened right now. Doesn't require a nuclear war. You don't have to use these weapons. Just building them starves the domestic economy and kills millions of Americans invisibly. And we have to get that information out there. Our nations were not being attacked by Russia or by China or Iran or even North Korea. We're being attacked by the coronavirus and many, many forms of ill health, and the most sophisticated military weapons the world has ever known.
Jonathan, can you sum it up?
Yep, I'm finishing up. Are completely useful against the virus. They're completely useless against Alzheimer's, against heart disease, against cancer. So we do need commissions like this. We need to fight for them. If we don't get it this term, we need to get another term. And as I just mentioned right in the beginning, Carol Doherty and Joe Comerford report that the taxpayers' right to know bill, which would report similar information, is also going to come out of committee. So we'll be getting in touch with you to get support on that too. Thanks a lot for your time.
And Jonathan, would you like to introduce?
Sure. So I believe our last speaker is Sandy Eaton. Sandy, are you on? I don't see you on.
I am.
Okay, Sandy Eaton was an officer of the Mass Nurses Association, sits on the National Nurses United Legislative Committee, leader in Mass Care, which is the Medicare for All coalition in Massachusetts. And he's going to talk in more detail about the need in the healthcare, public health sector for public resources.
Oh, thanks, Jonathan, for inviting me to take a few of your minutes away from you. And thanks to Susan for hosting, and certainly thanks to Representative Sabadosa for presenting a piece of legislature around which we can organize. Whether or not we succeed in getting it through the legislature this session, the next session is coming up very, very quickly. Originally, we wanted to have Katie Murphy, the president of the Massachusetts Nurses Association, speak here today. She worked a 12-hour ICU night shift recently, and she's recovering today. So I'm the poor substitute to represent the nursing community. I really want to identify with all of the good points everybody's made so far. I certainly don't want to repeat them, and I don't want to substitute any of my wisdom. But as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking of T.S. Eliot and his musing, how will the world end, with a bang, whimper or a bang or whatever. And all I can think of is, between climate collapse and a nuclear winter, things are looking pretty grim right now. And I think even more grim because of the foolishness of our leadership in our country. The folks in the Russian Federation have to deal with their leadership, and in time they will. And we need to deal with our leadership. It was the Obama administration that projected $1 trillion over 10 years to upgrade our nuclear capacity. And it was the Trump administration that continued that. And I haven't heard of any reneging from the Biden administration. When in the summer of 1983, I visited the German Democratic Republic with delegates from 6 nations doing a little educational work. And at that time, NATO was rolling out Pershing II missiles, nuclear tipped, pointing east all along the border between the Federal Republic of Germany and the German Democratic Republic. Tensions were running extremely high. And I already knew then, and I even more know now, that NATO is the greatest threat to peace in the world, as the folks in Serbia, in Libya, in Iraq and Afghanistan and so forth, far beyond any kind of North Atlantic defense. There are sufficient grievances within ethnically ripped Ukraine for folks outside to be concerned. But that did not, of course, justify the Russian military incursion into Ukraine. But what we need now is negotiations. But there are forces that lead to all the reckless posture of our leadership, the armaments industry, and the fossil fuel industry, which is going to frack the hell out of North America in order to make a colossal killing with the closing off of Nord Stream 2 and the other pipelines coming across into Europe. So we're in a dire strait. Our leadership is not yet afraid of us. We have not yet had the strength to impose the will of the people that we negotiate. And I'm certainly hoping, whether back door, side door, front door, that we can quickly negotiate a ceasefire, that we can quickly negotiate backing off, and certainly pledge that we're not going to engage in nuclear brinksmanship any more than any other kind of brinksmanship. So this is my personal message. I'm not speaking for the Massachusetts Nurses Association by any means, but I just couldn't sit still and not get this off my chest. I think that's all I want to say right now. Oh, the White House a few days ago announced that it didn't have enough cash on hand for another round of booster shots for the population of this country. Yet we just put $1 billion worth of armaments into Ukraine and are not pushing for negotiation, but are pushing for more war. This is an unconscionable position, and it blows back. I'm so glad that we have this bill in the legislature right now in Massachusetts that we can organize at the grassroots level to build the movement that will make the powers that be afraid of us. Thanks, Jonathan. I'll turn it back to you.
Susan?
Thank you both, Jonathan and Sandy, for talking about where money should be spent, and also for the rights of people that Emma talked about, the right to live. So talking about rights and what we can do about this whole issue and work on this nuclear weapons commission. Well, let's go to Vicki Elson, who is the co-founder of Nuclearband.us and has done wonderful work engaging people and helping people come to terms and work on the issue, the fear, the reality of nuclear weapons. Vicki, what
Thank you
you
so
can
much,
do
Susan.
to help pass this bill. Go for it.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you to all of our speakers. And thank you to all the people who are still in the room. This is hard stuff to be thinking about. So I get to be the bearer of good news, which is that there is all kinds of stuff you can do about this. And one of the things is this Massachusetts legislation. So the next thing we're going to do is break into breakout groups with some very lovely hosts. And we're going to write letters to members of the Massachusetts State Legislature to support this bill. And Timon has very cleverly broken it down so that you write different letters to different legislators depending on what their position is on this issue and on this particular piece of legislation. So this is a really powerful thing that you can do. We are sparking a conversation in Massachusetts, in the state legislature, and among the people. We're setting an example for other states. There are rumors of other states copying the same kind of commission legislation. Mm-hmm. And this is really just the beginning. After we have our breakout groups, we're going to come back together. So please stick around, and we will congratulate one another for having achieved something today. And we'll talk about next steps, because this is just the start. So Emma is going to put in the chat the link to the page to go to in your breakout room. And we're going to be working through these steps together to write these letters. So hopefully the instructions are clear and your breakout host will guide you and help you. So, you could just sit home and do this all by yourself, but isn't it so much more fun if we do it together? And, if the technology of it is a little intimidating for some of us, we're all in this together. We can all help each other out. So
If you are a Massachusetts voter, you'll be in a particular breakout room. We've kind of divvied them up by geography. However, if you're from out of state, you're ever so welcome to drop in and visit any of the breakout rooms. We'll take you anywhere you want to go, and maybe you'll get inspired to do this in your own state. So be sure again.
Who are your two people?
Ram Yen is my rep, and Barry Feingold, my senator,
Okay,
and I have both emails, both phones.
Okay. And Brenda, what about you?
I have Dylan Fernandez and Susan Moran. Neither of them are on this list.
Okay. Philip, you got anybody on the list?
I don't even see any list or anything. I'm afraid I'm out of the program. Go ahead without me. I'll come back around and do it later.
Well, do you know who your rep and senator are or not?
Yeah, Lori Trey. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, the state.
The state. No, sorry. I forgot. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll come back around later.
Okay. Well, you could go to that page that says "Find your legislator" and you just put your zip code and it will tell you.
I don't find that page. Okay.
Okay. Do you see the one that's? Are you on the page that says Nuclearband/mass?
No, I don't.
No. Okay.
Wait a minute.
Okay. Well, maybe Cole could help you on the side or something. Anne, have you got your two?
Yeah, it's Vargas and DiZoglio. They're not on the list.
They're not on the list. Okay. So if somebody's on the list, so far, I guess it's just Claire's. Peter, we got a couple more people. Peter or Alan or Sister Mary. Anybody else got somebody on the list?
No, we have Frank Moran and Barry Feingold, and they're not on the list.
Okay.
No, I'm Decker and Zeller, so they're not on the list.
Okay.
Either.
Okay. So if they're not on the list, then you go down to number 4B. So are you on the page that says nuclearband.us/mass?
Yes.
So number 4 says, are they on one of these lists? And they're not. So you go down. 4A says, if yes, do this. If no, you need two things. You need their address and you need this generic letter to edit. So if you click on where it says copy and paste this generic letter, do you see that?
Yes.
So if you click on that, you will get the page, hopefully, that says draft letter to MA state reps. And this is a draft, and you can edit it and personalize it and do whatever you want with it, or you can write your own letter. But this is a draft letter for you, available to you. Do you know how to copy and paste it into an email?
Yes.
Does anybody not know how to do that? Because you can just copy and paste it. So that whole page, or just where it says "Dear" and the name of state rep, and copy that down to where it says your name and phone number, and paste that into your email. And then you need to put the address of your person that you're going to choose, either a rep or senator. If you still have their name, you can, or if you know, like Bariani, you already have their email addresses, you said, right?
Yeah, they are right here on the page.
Yeah. So you just need to copy their email address into the to line, put a subject like "Please support H3688" or something like that. Paste the draft letter in there, and then edit it to make it a bit more personal. You can say, first of all, obviously, to say dear representative, whoever it is, and at the end you got to make sure you put your name, address, and phone number, because they want to know that you're in their district. Otherwise they won't answer it, and they might not even read it. And then you can say, if you know your representative or anything about them, you might want to say something personal, like, thanks for supporting my nursery school or something, or I've not met you before, but I'd like to talk to you about this issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys okay over there, Alan? And
yes, thank you. Thank you.
Is anybody able to get their letter into their email and get the address on there and fiddle around with it and ready to send it? And it looks like you're working on that. Richard, are you able? Or you came in late, but have you?
I don't know where to go.
Okay, so we're going to the page in the chat that says, if you go to the chat button, you'll see a thing that says https www.nuclearband.us/mass. Do you see that?
Nope.
Do you see the chat button?
Yes, when I click on chat, I only see two little things. Just sent mine to Senator Moore and thanks Claire, and I don't see anything else.
Okay, I'm gonna put it into again now. Okay, do you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So click on that, and you will go to where we all are. And here's Lynn. Were you in another group?
I was in my group.
And you're done?
Yes. Well, we only had 2 people that could do it, so we got 4 out.
Okay.
And Sheila would need some one-on-one. So can somebody agree to do that after this?
Okay. Yep. So are we getting? It's already 25 past. So
I think Richard needs some help.
Yep. Well, we're gonna set this up for after. But Cole, do you want to get everybody back then, and we can you do that, or how does that work?
Yeah, I can close all the rooms. Yep.
Yeah, and we'll just come back, and then Vicky will explain where we go from here.
Yeah.
And we'll just see if anybody managed to do it. We had a very short amount of time, but we all did a very great job of having a go at it. And that's just the beginning.
It gave them 60 seconds, so we'll take a few more seconds.
Uh-oh.
So we're just all coming back, and Vicky is going to
there it is.
help everybody to take the next steps before we close.
Great.
Including getting help. If you need more help to send these letters, your group facilitator might be able to still help, or one of us is totally willing on one-to-one by email or phone or whatever. We'll help you finish the process. Vicky.
Okay. There we go.
Impressive.
Isn't that amazing?
That was fun, huh?
I finally got to send a letter to my state.
Oh, good.
Terrific.
The thousands in one letter.
Thousands in one.
So if you successfully wrote a letter, I can't see everybody, but just if you successfully wrote a letter, wave, yay.
Yay.
And also pat yourself on the head, great work. If you had, as Tim said, if you had technical problems, please drop a note to info@nuclearband.us or stay on this call at the end or whatever you like. We'll help you do it. I want to encourage you again to ask your friends to join this. You can just share that Nuclearband mass action, whatever it was, page with them. And we're happy to help in any way we can, especially in Walter Timothy's district, but really all the people on that list. I want to thank all of our breakout hosts. Thank you all very much. And this is just the start of this campaign, the final push to get this bill passed. So there's going to be a lobby day on April 13th in Boston, and you have a link to that MAPPA event in the chat. So take a look at that. And we will also, I'm sure, be taking the liberty of emailing you all and inviting you to that as well. And the information packet, the dossier that you saw, that'll be coming out soon. Thank you, Emma, for that.
Amazing.
Yeah, so keep writing letters. You can write to all the people on that list if you feel inspired. I know I feel inspired by both love and fear today to put some more time into this. We will also be doing letters to the editor. We'll invite you to be part of that, or you can just do your own however you want. We're working, there's so many people on this call who are working on so many different aspects of this. At Nuclearband, we're working at the congressional level nationally, and there are people working on divestment and all kinds of other things. So whatever suits you, whatever fits your passions and your skill set, go for it. That wraps us up. Thank you, Cole, for your technical wizardry today. Thank you, Tim, for organizing this. And Susan, is it okay with you if we stay on this call for a little while and answer any questions or visit or whatever you like?
Good idea.
Okay, well, that's the end of the official part of the meeting, but stick around if you want to. Susan, you're still in charge.
All right. Well, being in charge, I now will call on people. Is that what you would like me to do?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Well, I think we just need to say that, you know, we promised to finish at 4:30, and it is now 4:30.
Right.
So anybody that is had enough of this is very welcome to go and have the rest of their day. But if people want to stay on, I don't know how long we can go, but I think we need to fix a time for questions or any other comments before people that want to stay on. But the official program is finished. Or is that right?
Okay. Another 10 minutes.
Okay.
Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So goodbye to some of you and see you on lobby day. All right. I see that Peter has a question and then Louise. So Peter.
Yeah, I don't have a question, and I'm sorry I'm not getting to emphasize this. I'm glad that Timon and Vicky are still on. The emphasis this month has to be on prying this bill out of committee, right? So our messages need to be, tell the committee members, if you're not talking to a committee member, that this bill needs to go to the House and Senate floor for public debate. Okay, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
That's
That's what the letters say, Peter. So that's great. Thank you.
Excellent. It's and let me just report that Linda Davis has set up a meeting with Senator Becca Rausch that I'll be joining for next week. April 4th. To try to get Becca Rausch to apply her leverage because she's a member of the committee.
Thank you very much, Peter. And we thank Linda also for her work. Okay, Louise.
I just wanted to sort of second that Becca Rausch is really important for, I think, people to write to, for her to get a lot of mail on this. She is my senator, and I've been disappointed in her response to my queries. It's again, it always goes back to the squeaky wheel, and we certainly have a wheel that needs attention. So just wanted to say that, I mean, like Becca Ross, she's having a fundraiser with Michelle Wu tonight or tomorrow. I mean, so she's a high visibility person right now, and she's going to be she's up for re-election. So anyway, I'm just pleased that we had this opportunity, and I think that we need to make use of it. Thank you. Oh, and let's just thank Emma for doing such a good job of helping us with the letter writing stuff. Thanks.
Yeah, we have a lot of information in that packet that Emma is sending out. And so for those of you who are on this, still please again go visit nuclearband.us. I see there's a question in the chat. What are some of the objections to this legislation, which might help as we talk with people? Vicky, Timon, any ideas?
Well, people that think we have to stay strong and, fight the Russians and have nuclear weapons, don't want this bill, even though the bill itself just sets up a commission to look into all this. So I think we have to argue back with anybody in the State House who says they have any objections at all. Like, what is your objection to having a commission look into this and report back? It doesn't make any sense that they would have any objections.
Vicky, any thoughts? No. Okay. I guess we go back to the idea of the commission and the idea of basic human right to be safe, and the legislators' obligation to their constituents, wherever they are throughout Massachusetts, to keep us safe. We know that the nurses are not prepared to keep us safe. The whole health community is not prepared. So this commission is very important to look at this issue. Any other questions?
I put my hand back up.
Okay, Peter.
No, let's hear from other people first.
Okay, anybody else?
Absolutely.
There's two people there, Susan.
Two, okay, sorry. Let me look.
I see Linda and Peter.
Yep.
Peter
Linda-
Orlando.
Linda.
Yes.
And also Linda Davis.
Well, Linda, you can go first, if you wish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a way that we can get in a really good form the words of IRAs that give the facts and figures of what would happen? I would like to include it in some of my correspondence to legislators.
Yeah, that was really great.
He gives that speach a lot, and
I know he does. I've
really,
heard
really
it
well.
many
So
times,
tell you
but
what,
we
while you
haven't
guys are
memorized
chatting,
it.
yeah, I'm gonna Google around and see if I can find a quick version of it for you. So hang on.
Thank you.
Okay, and who is next? I didn't see that next hand.
Peter Orlando.
Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Peter.
Oh, very good. Yes, this is fine to do this. However, I must say, I am so outraged at the disgrace of our civilization and others that we're into this predicament. For small political gain, we're going to blow up the world. And I think we have to negotiate. And everything that I see means that we're going to escalate from one end to the other. And all those horrible officials, those neocons from the Bush, from the Obama administration, and now in the Biden administration. And I just want to get on a bus or a plane to Washington and say, you have to negotiate. You have to figure out a way to back off. And I just say to myself, both sides have to back off. It's better to be a live donkey than a dead lion, as the Bible would say. And I just think that I have to go directly to where this problem festers, which is right in Congress. And I'm just so outraged that at this stage in my life, where I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis, another disgraceful example of our failure of civilization, we have to go through this.
Yes.
So I want to know if they're going, if anyone's thinking of demonstrating in Washington.
We're doing here on this
Okay,
to our
I'm going off
excuse
track.
me, Peter.
nuclear map.
And Richard, hold off. Peter, we hear what you're saying and absolutely agree with you about the outrage. So we do what we can do, both Mass Peace Action and Nuclearband.us. We are doing what we can do, and we absolutely welcome your input and your energy, your voice to this. And now I see Cole, you've got your hand up.
Just before we end, I haven't heard anyone in the webinar today mention that President Biden today in Warsaw said that Putin cannot remain in power. So he has made this into a war for regime change. And they sort of walked it back, but not really. It's sort of a lame walk back. So I'm afraid to say that the war has taken an even more serious turn. This is really getting serious, folks. That's all.
Okay.
All right, let's see. Is there anybody else?
Yeah.
Who's got their hand up aside from Peter?
Yeah, Elaine.
Elaine.
Well, just to say, Cole, I'm so glad you mentioned that again because it's crucial. Joseph did actually mention it, but it's something that should be said 5 or 6 times for our leader to say that our goal is to have regime change. Is if that isn't fatal, I don't know what is.
Not what he said.
Words to that effect.
Right, he said, right.
Well, okay, so let me just tell you the versions of it I've heard. I've heard multiple versions of it, Peter.
I watched it.
Okay, I think we should close this meeting.
Yes.
We're trying to talk about
I want to talk about the bill. You're letting the topic go.
All right, let's go back to, we heard what Elaine was saying and the importance of this, and what Cole said, the importance of this. Let's go back to either Vicky or Timon to close us off to talk about what we can do in
Wait
this
a minute, I
horrible
have a question
situation
about the bill.
about the bill.
I have a question about the bill. Why are you closing it off? Who's in such a rush?
Because we said we'd end this at.
Who cares? Why are you in such a rush? The purpose is to have dialogue. Why are you cutting it off, Susan?
Maybe we can talk about where we can meet or how we can meet.
We're here.
Talk about this.
Is there anybody?
Peter, there are
excuse me.
meetings all the time about all these issues. This is about our bill, and we finished at 4:30. We stayed on extra to have questions about the process of sending letters to your legislator. That's what we had said. So
okay, so as we agreed to end, Peter, your questions are very important because they probably echo questions that other people have. Please send them to Timon or Vicky, and they can continue this discussion. For all of you who are here, please let's continue this discussion either through Mass Peace Action or nuclearband.us, and let's work on this commission. Vicky, did you have anything parting to say?
Yeah, I'm just noticing that Richard is on this call, and I believe, Richard, you're the source of a whole bunch of really useful information that Emma used or will use, right? Is that correct? About Massachusetts and the nuclear weapons industry. So I just wanted to.
I hope so. Yeah. Yes.
Well, since you're there, I just wanted to say hi. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
And thank you to everybody on this call for doing such a great job.
And right now I came back in late, but right now I'm very busy writing my letter to Sal Di Domenico.
All right.
Okay. That's what this is all about. And again, please send your questions. Email Timon or Vicky. Are your email addresses in the chat, or go to info@nuclearband.us. Peter and everybody else, but we're over time now. We said we'd end. So take care. Let's work for action, and thank you all.